disgusting.
Good morning. We're not really ready for prime time yet, but normally 2 by 2 we're maybe awake and put together. But
I don't know.
Not feeling it this morning.
It's probably 6s. Probably by 2, I'm like, I'm over this
You're cooked,
day.
right?
Let's hurry up and say the words.
I've peopled too much already,
Yeah.
so
Yeah. You're welcome. You're getting the first peopling of the day out of
Wow,
me.
that is
Yeah.
very special time.
It's not any better. It's just the same.
Oh,
all right,
man.
Cool. So let's see. Welcome to Wednesday. Thank you for joining us in the morning. We had some schedule. We're double, triple booked this afternoon. So
yeah, on good things. Cool client work for Meg, and I'm down with Cappy filming the reveal show for his new off the grid show on the Discovery Channel. So that will be super fun. So no offense, but all of that takes precedent over this Facebook Live.
No, you guys take precedence
Actually,
over all
that's
that,
true,
and that's why we
because
moved you.
we're here at
otherwise
9.
we would have canceled.
That's true. I have to say, we rearranged. We cancel a lot, and you don't get canceled. So congratulations. Well, hey, Laura. Hey, Jennifer. It's good to see you. All right. So announcements. Is that announcement list?
Remind people, is this our announcements?
Oh, Shelly's got us our announcement list.
Okay, reveal show in Hill City. You already said that.
I already said that. Yep.
Remind people. Oh, yeah, there's a membership contest going on. What are we up to, Shelly?
Like 610.
610.
610.
Awesome.
All right,
So
we
we
got
got
to get to 1,000 by December. So listen, I don't mean to make this your problem, but it is. We've literally invited everyone we know on Facebook. Thank you for accepting.
Which is 610 people, currently. So.
Roughly. Well, no, 610 people accepted.
Right.
So send this out to everyone you know. You're clearly joining and listening, so you know that they'll get value out of it. We're talking about imposter syndrome today. Don't feel like an imposter. We really do cool shit. You can share it with everyone you know. Visit Shelly tomorrow at the Chamber Mixer in Spearfish. She'll be in Chamber Mixer, and it's at the Elkhorn Ridge in the afternoon. I'm sure they're going to have some libations available.
There's always snacks and drinks.
We are recording the How the Hell Did I Get Here episodes for 2020.
Really
that's actually off to our audio wizard right now, who is wrapping
awesome. Good.
wrapping all that and taking care of that.
And we have awesome people already, like Kasai El-Haj, which is a senator's local committee guy. We've got Priscilla Ramkama, who is the president of a huge hospital foundation in our region. And we have Jennifer Farr-Davis, who's a National Geographic explorer. Hello. Anyway, it's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
It's really good people.
Yes. And then you've got a couple places.
I've got a couple things on here. Yeah, this weekend I'm going to be working with Billy Sutton's leadership group. It's their second time I spoke at their inaugural meeting. And this time we're actually I offered to do project management work with them because they all have projects, and I assume now they're all in some level of struggle. So I thought I would help get some things organized for them. And so we're working with on project managing, and they're all community developers and wanting to make a difference. So it's will be a very engaged and fun weekend. And then Emerging Leaders, South Dakota Banking Association is having they're having an Emerging Leaders event next week. And I'll be speaking there on, I think I called it The Culture Wars, A New Hope.
Oh, like Star Wars.
Episode 4.
Gal, I'll tell you what, Han Solo would be so proud of you.
Super nerd. Oh, yes. And we have 2020 planners for sale that is starting in the first of the year in January. We will be connecting our topic of the week with our planner in each section. In each week, there's a place to think about that we have a prompt section where we're going to have a place for you to actually do a little writing, a little reflection on the topic of the week, also a space for gratitude. So that's going to be really fun, because if you're here, you're already listening, and then that will actually help you sort of anchor what the topics are and what you learn from it every week, so you can go back and review that or use it as a resource. So it's going to be really, really fun. and they're like $20. So you can get them on Amazon. Shelly's got a pile. If you want to buy from directly from us, that would be great too. So we make more money if you buy it from us. So, and we'll sign it, Shelly says. So cool.
I'm a signed planner.
Yeah, if you want a signed planner.
Because
we'll sign your birthday. We'll make a happy birthday message on your birthday. So tell us what your birthday is, and we'll sign it on your birthday. Let's see, anything else? I think that's it. So awesome.
Okay.
Imposter syndrome.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, we don't know anything about that.
People think we don't know anything about it.
Right.
And I'll tell you what, it takes a lot of work to pretend like you don't know.
Pretend like you don't care.
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, well, basically imposter syndrome, for anybody who's wondering what the heck we're talking about, is feeling like you don't deserve what you're getting or where you're at, or that you don't really know enough, you're not smart enough to be where you're at or to go where you want to go in your career or even in your personal life. So as a simple example in my personal life, when I first started running, I said for many years, like even after I had run a marathon, I said, I'm not a runner. People would say, oh, you're a runner. Rachel would introduce me and say, oh yeah, Meg, blah, blah, blah. She's a runner.
Runs marathons.
And I'm like, oh, no, I'm not really a runner. Because I just thought I'm not a runner. I just run. And so imposter syndrome is kind of about getting over those mental hurdles where you're thinking that you don't deserve or not good enough or couldn't possibly ever be considered by other people to be what you are, what you want to be.
And frankly, it's the feeling of that someday someone's going to catch you doing something that you're not really qualified to do, that they're going to find out that you're an imposter because what you know and do isn't really as good as you think it is. And so it's a real mental head game that we all have. And I guess one example for me is we went in to speak to a big client, and I thought, oh God, they're going to ask me stuff that I'm not going to know the answer to, or they're going to have different words that I don't know. And I got in there and they were a freaking mess, and everything that we do could help them. And it was just silly to be worried about, oh, I hope they don't hate me. Oh my God, what's going to happen? And so it was totally fine. So yeah. So that happens in business and in personal for sure. Yeah. Hey, Karen. All right, so we have 4 questions. We got the first one nailed already. If you have imposter syndrome story that you want to share, you should put it in the comments while we work through some of these things.
Yeah.
All right, so we have other questions. Have you experienced imposter syndrome at work? We'll talk more about that. How can I use culture types to help team members and probably yourself work through imposter syndrome? And then how can leaders steer clear of catching imposter syndrome?
Yeah, so should we start with the bottom one?
Yes, I think so.
How can leaders steer clear of catching imposter syndrome? Well, good luck. Imposter syndrome is, it's kind of part of the journey, right? Like you better damn well think you don't know what you're doing until you can guarantee to yourself that you do. We all kind of get hung up, I think especially women more than men, get hung up towards the end of that journey where you're like, God, do I really know what I think I know? But at the beginning, when you really don't know anything, I mean, if you think about when you started college or when you started your first job or, maybe when you were moved from one role into a higher role, you got a role promotion at work, you didn't think you knew everything about it. You were nervous and you thought, oh my God, there are things that I'm not going to know, and I'm going to say something in a meeting and everybody's going to know that I don't know what I'm talking about. So I don't know if you want to steer clear of catching imposter syndrome. I think what you want to do is manage it really well when you get towards the end of that journey, kind of the arc of that journey when you're thinking, okay, no, I think I know what I'm doing. So one trick that I use that a guy taught me in college, and how this guy was so wise when we were young, I don't know. But I mean, this has served me so well in my life. People think I'm so smart.
Don't tell me that. You are smart.
Well, I know, but I'm not as smart as I act like I am. But let me tell you my trick.
That might go to Shane's question, which is, where's the line between imposter syndrome and pushing your own limits?
Well, yeah. Okay, Shane, hang on. I'll answer that question. I'm going to tell you this story, this trick. So This guy's name was John Boss. John, if you ever hear this, I hope you're well. This guy works all over the world for United Nations or something now. I don't know what he does. But I said, God, John, you're so smart. How come you're so smart? Like, how do you know something about everything? And he said, you just have to apply a little common sense and think of 3 basic things that you know about any conversation somebody's talking about. Like, if you know the word baseball diamond, when people are talking about baseball, that's something, and you figure out how to insert it in the conversation, you instantly become an expert, because humans are really that easy. So I tested this theory all through my whole life since college, and it works beautifully. So one of my tips about kind of making sure you don't let imposter syndrome take over your success in your life is to just, and if you don't know 3 things, like, look them up. Like, you don't have to read white papers on something, but if you're going to have a conversation with somebody about, whatever, I have a lot of sports analogies this morning, golf, then Google golf. And look up, a famous golf person. Look up what kind of tools you use, like
recent tournament you could
talk about. Oh man, did you see in the news? This is how it happens. And for you ladies out there who are listening, sorry, Shane, you're just gonna have to hang in there with me. No, like, learn, do this thing. This is how men actually do. This is why they only can communicate. They have limited communication with each other, because this is how they actually live. It's true. This is why, like in the 90s, part of the advice for women who were trying to get into the executive space was know about football, know about this, know about that. Because if you just kind of act like then you're one of the guys. So know 3 things about everything. That's my tip for not catching or suffering from imposter syndrome.
I think my tip for not suffering as much is, well, first of all, I love that tip as far as like getting yourself ready for a conversation. As an example, like I had a conversation with the VC yesterday, and we don't live in that world all the time. And I know they have their own sort of language and how they see the world. And so I went out, read his LinkedIn profile, made sure that I understood he came up through financial services. And so that helps me contextualize how he's going to see the world. And so then I can make sure that I connect with that. But that doesn't really help for me to think, well, if they ask 3 questions past the thing I know, then I'm screwed, right? For me, what really helps me is to admit when you don't know the thing. So if you're in a conversation with golf and you're like, hey, I read about the tournament last weekend and I saw the Tigers back and whatever, and then they say, hey, what do you think about last year when Tiger had the blah, blah breakdown or whatever happened? And I say, you know what? I actually don't know about that. Tell me about what happened. And by knowing that you can be confident, and when you say, I don't actually know the answer, if you're expected to know the answer, you can say, I don't know that right now. Let me go find out. Or let me go ask the person that I know knows about that. Or if it's just a conversation, they could say, tell me about what you think about that topic. And so for me, it's almost like being able to overcome that moment of, oh shit, I don't actually know. Or I don't know anything about that. Because I think that's what a lot of us fear, is that us getting caught out in, we act like we know something and we don't. And so I'm totally fine with not knowing something, in the sense of, I don't know this guy's, this VC I talked to works with banks, institutions that want to invest money. And so I asked him, I said, tell me about the level of rigor that would require, because clearly banks are going to have more reporting and be more uptight about how their money gets spent than maybe someone who just has a ton of money in the bank. So you can just ask those questions when you don't really have a background. So I think that's the other way that I think about it. I do the background though. I don't go into something totally unprepared. So that's a real way to feel like you're ready to go. Do you have something for Shane?
I don't know. Where's the line between imposter syndrome and pushing your own limits?
Now, I could maybe see where that's relating to business development and like sort of the act like you know before you are there. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So that, But the great thing is usually that's based on real experience, hopefully, right? So let's say that you have 5 clients that you've helped, and then you say something big about that, right? You say, well, I've been helping people all year with this problem. So sometimes we, especially in marketing and growing companies, we want to be pushing all the time to showcase our expertise and our talents. And as long as you can back that up with real stuff, then I think that's pushing. Like if you want to take on your biggest client ever or your biggest challenge ever, and you've kind of baby stepped it and you're prepared, and you want to take that on, that to me is pushing your limits. And but imposter syndrome, you're going to feel like, oh God, can I do this? Can I do this? I don't know if I can do it. And that's the imposter syndrome. So it's almost to me like they go hand in hand. It's not one or the other. It's like, if you're pushing your limits, this is going to come harder at you than it normally does. Because if you're not pushing yourself out of your comfort zone, then you're not going to feel that nearly as much, I don't think.
Yeah, I think when Rachel was talking about, say I don't know when you don't actually know, and then ask for information, I think that's the line, like, that people blur, right? So then everybody thinks that you're a know-it-all, or they kind of know you're an imposter. That happens when you act like you know more than you do, and then you go on saying something that other people know to be wrong. So I would say know your 3 things, or whatever. If you become an expert in something, 10 things or 12 things. But if there's a 13th thing that you don't know, just say, I don't know, because that a bit of humbleness that's where people start to trust you. And that's where the imposter syndrome actually goes away for other people. They quit doubting, because if they say, oh, well, Meg's brave enough to say, yeah, I don't know about that. We should find out, or I can find out, or tell me more about it. That's, I think, the line between the two.
I think too, it was so funny because I was at this event in Toronto. Jeff Hazlett was speaking, and he actually said something to this effect, like, if you're meeting with someone who's 22 years old and they tell you that they can change your life, make sure you make 7 figures next year, these grand promises that we all know are bullshit, frankly, that's when you break that trust down. And that's when pushing your limits, your own limits, turns into creating promises that you can't keep, or knowing that, I'm not going to hire a 21-year-old to be my life coach. They haven't lived, right? Like, I'm not going to hire a life coach anyway, let's be honest. But, if that's your space, you have to be careful of what you're promising, because if you're 22 and you're just like, well, I'm a life coach and I'm going to change how you live, it's probably not true. It's probably that you may have gone through something incredible. Maybe you lost your parents young and you've had to raise your own siblings, and that's really powerful. But say that, and say what you've learned about that. Don't tell me as a 45-year-old that you're going to change my life. But what you can do is give me insight that I might not have about a topic or particular thing. So I think that's where we get in trouble as business owners, when we try to say more than we actually know. And maybe that 21-year-old, it changed her life, but that's not going to change my life. And so that's some of the just humbleness and awareness of what pieces are you offering, that you're not overstating your skill set. So I think that's an important line.
I think another thing that helps with that, well, we haven't moved on to the next questions yet, but another thing that helps with that is maybe if you're working on a team, taking some I out of your language and putting in some we, because it does 2 things for you. One, then everybody doesn't think that you think you saved the world. And 2, it helps you in your own brain start thinking about, or it gives you room to think that you have help. Because if I say, well, just think about it. Like, if I say to Rachel, I'm going to get this done, that's a different statement than we need to make sure this happens. We need to make sure we get this done. Because if I say I'm going to get it done, then Rachel says, okay, Meg's going to get it done. And then if I don't get it done, guess who didn't do it? Me. That's not on Rachel. If I say, hey, we really need to get this done, and then I say, as part of that statement, my follow-up would be, and holy crap, we're both really busy this week. Let's put some time on the calendar. Or could you work on this, because I just know there's no way I'm going to get it done, or whatever. So I think that taking some of the I out of your language does you a favor, and it helps people understand that you're part of that team. And that breaks down some of that imposter syndrome, where they might think that you think you're a hero.
Right.
And
That's
really,
true.
you're just trying to make sure everything gets done, and you're trying to be responsible. But
yeah, I think this leads into the culture type question, which is how can I use culture types to get through imposter syndrome? So one of the things that I think as we think about culture types, so self-driven people, self-driven as they need to like process on their own, and they want to maybe hear an idea, go think about it, figure out how they want to approach it, and then work with the team. Some of that sort of, and team-driven people, it might be that maybe we agonize over this. We've never actually looked at imposter syndrome and see which people are where as far as that goes. Chaos people are definitely more likely to say, we can totally do that. We've never done it before, but let's do it. And so I think that might lend itself to imposter syndrome. But at the same time, we know we can pull the shit off that we say we're going to. And so I think that's a real, and then, so I think that's an aspect to think about. It might be that order tolerant people who like predictability, like to do things that they understand and know, they might have maybe imposter syndrome is more crippling. I don't know. What do you think? Because it creates chaos and that's all part of it? Or do you think that's a different?
Well, I think that they might not ever, maybe they would never even get out of the point of that initial phase of imposter syndrome because they don't want to upset the apple cart, or they just, they don't really care about being an expert for like to a group or to other people. Like they're order tolerant, so they know what they're really expert in, but they don't really care about how much anybody else cares about it or knows. Like, I guess in my perspective and all of the people that we've met and culture typed, order tolerant folks are a lot less bravado. Right. I would say in their,
for sure,
in their delivery of things, not to mean that is not to be confused with extrovert or introvert. They're more reserved in their delivery and kind of how they do things. So I think they would be really, I think they're really worried about imposter syndrome because they want the details, they want the information, and they don't really want the spotlight. So I don't know, like I would venture to guess that a lot of order tolerant people would never even get out of that first, like you said, like the crippling part of it.
Yeah, it's interesting.
But they could, like they would deserve to be way over here where it's like, dude, you're,
because they are experts,
a genius, But you think about order tolerant people, they're like, oh no, I'm, whereas if you said that to a chaos tolerant person, like you said to me, I'm like, well, people think I'm smart. And you said, well, people think you're smart because you are smart. And I'm like, well, I know, but that's not what I mean,
and she thinks she can pull shit off, which also, but the interesting thing about stabilizers is the thing they don't want to be is distinct from the group either. And they're like locked into that social structure. So I think for them to think that someone thinks that they're an imposter would separate them from the group. And that would be the crippling part too, I think.
Yeah.
And not only is the chaos thing, because if you want to push, that creates chaos, possibly conflict, possibly bad feelings in the group. I think that would be tough. So for you stabilizers out there, you're probably really avoid this imposter syndrome as much as possible, I would guess. For sure. I think you're right. I think chaos people are more willing to push the envelope about, like to Shane's question, I'm willing to push my own limits. And that's going to put me in that world of, hey, I might get caught in something that I might not know, or I'm afraid I don't know. But I think for us, like right away, you said, well, I strategize about what's the opportunity in being in a place where I might not know everything, right? What's the opportunity? I'm going to learn a little bit. I'm going to read up on it. I'm going to put myself out there. I'm going to learn their language, and I'm going to be able to talk to them about what I do, but in their space. I think that's an opportunity that chaos people have, because I don't think that order tolerant people would be as comfortable doing that. So it's definitely being aware of where you are. And frankly, the thing that will be crippling about imposter syndrome for the stabilizers and maybe organizers in the world is that when you go for that promotion, or you want to expand maybe you want to ask just to attend a conference, or, and then, you're afraid the first question from your boss is going to be, well, why do you deserve that? Or tell me why you think you should get this promotion. It's like, oh my God, I don't know. And of course it's because that conflict environment is not something that you thrive in, where the higher in the chaos side, the more that doesn't phase you as much. So I think for the order tolerant, it's just being more prepared, I would say, for all of those questions. And so if you're going to go in to ask for something or work with a client that you're not sure about, just be uber prepared for all of the contingencies. And that's going to like help your imposter syndrome get sorted out, I think.
Yeah.
Probably less than we would need, but.
And I would say for as far as comfortability goes, for order tolerant people, being prepared, having all the information and data that you think you need, not just that some chaos tolerant person says, oh, don't worry, you won't need to know that. If that makes you uncomfortable, go find the information, go talk to people, right. Whatever, get comfortable for yourself. And I think also even for chaos tolerant people, for a different reason though, like also do fact finding and know what you're talking about, because the way imposter syndrome is proved to be true is if you get caught and then you don't know what you're talking about and then you don't admit it. Like you talk yourself into whatever situation into a corner and then somebody asks you the question you can't answer and you're like, shit, now they're all gonna know. So
that's what we're all afraid of.
Yeah. So even as a chaos tolerant person, I think, sort of the kryptonite for chaos tolerant people is we don't do fact finding and organization very well. So make sure you do it, because if you don't do it, that will get you into some hot water.
Mm-hmm. For sure.
And I think if you're trying to help other people through it, so if you're trying to pull a person, say that it's a person that works for you and you're trying to pull them through to earn a promotion or maybe to work on a new project, and they say, well, gosh, I don't know anything about this. And you find that if you find that their culture type is an order tolerant one, stabilizer and organizer, then I would say help them find the information they need. And sometimes that information is not Googling or data, in a spreadsheet or whatever. Sometimes it's they need to go talk to people. They, and say, hey, well, what do you think about this? And the person will tell them whatever they think and say, yeah, you're the right person for the job. I'm really glad you're doing this because I don't have to worry about it anymore. Or, I'm kind of nervous that you're doing this because I know you've never worked on it before. So if you need my help, let me know because I've done it. I just don't have the time right now. Especially for stabilizers, hearing that kind of information, like gathering that kind of information from a work group, that helps them. And an organizer might be less interested in that, but they still might want to know how they're going to impact the group. And I'd say if you're trying to pull a chaos tolerant person through a phase of imposter syndrome, it's still that sort of making them sit down and go through the details of how do you prove that you know what you say you know? Because, well, working with a client right now, and that's the question I ask a lot. Like, how do I believe you because I believe you? You're, endearing and charismatic. But prove to me why this is right. I mean, I think about this is a very grandiose example, but I think about Adolf Hitler. He's very charismatic. He actually had some really good leadership skills, right? But if when they finally, we'll say whoever, the Allies finally sat him down and said, why is it okay for you to be killing all these people? Well, what did he do? He popped a pill and killed himself, right?
So he knew he was
clearly imposter syndrome, right? Well, and he knew he was wrong. Otherwise,
he was caught out, right?
Yeah. So
he had built a paper
empire. So anyway, I think for chaos tolerant people, it's important that they can, what is the word? Extrapolate. That's not the word, but I'll use it. They can extrapolate on why they know what they know.
Expound.
Yeah, that wasn't it either. But
well, one really easy thing that's really helped me for just general imposter syndrome, let's say you're growing a company, you want a new promotion, you want to go for that board president job or whatever the thing is that you're excited to try that feels uncomfortable and you're worried about the imposter thing, is go through and just as an exercise, take 5 minutes and write as many things down as you've accomplished in your life. And I don't care if that's raised to healthy children that aren't in jail or whatever your measure of success is. Whether, if you start listing all the things that you've done in your life, I don't care how old you are or how much you've stayed in the same job. I will tell the story of my friend Carrie, who her daughter, she's been in the same job for a long time, but her daughter has serious health problems, like heart surgery kind of health problems. And so she has spent a majority of the last 10 years, well, 14 years, navigating doctors, meeting with 17 specialists. What's the best thing for my daughter? I don't like that answer because that worries me. I'm going to talk to 3 other people. Like, she's been doing all of this other stuff. And so she's been using her brain power in a totally not work way, but oh my God, like all of the coordinating and the investigating and the research and the decision-making, all of that is incredible amount of work and insight and brain power. So sometimes you just have to reflect on your own life and say, like, I've pulled off all of this stuff. And I guarantee you everyone that's listening has that list. And that alone, you're like, wow, I do know some stuff generally. And so if it's just a matter of kind of pumping yourself up and that gesture just made me think of the Wonder Woman pose. Do you do this in
the power pose?
The power pose, right? So sometimes it's just getting more your confidence up. And that's where that list comes in. That's where the body language comes in, to like just go in there and know that you can handle whatever they throw at you. Sometimes it's just that level of self-confidence. So
I would say one other thing I've noticed helps me, I did not do this on purpose, but I've, as a study of my life, figured it out. So the thing about imposter syndrome is the uncertainty, right? If you're going into a new thing, you're uncertain, so you feel like, gosh, I don't deserve this, or this couldn't be me, or whatever, and people are going to find out that I'm not the right person for this thing. Mm-hmm. So the uncertainty that goes along with that, if you haven't practiced being uncertain before, particularly order tolerant people, find something else, like bake a different kind of cookies that you've never baked before. Or if you're, not a baker, go build something that you've never built before. Go drive on a road you've never driven on before. Go drive in conditions you've never driven in before. Go do something you haven't done that has nothing to do with this big cliff you're about to jump off of in your life. And think about like what happened in all of that. Like, when did I really freak out, and when was I not so freaked out? And what do I wish I knew? What did I learn this time that I will use next time? Or what do I wish I would have known before I started baking those cookies? Like, oh shit, I didn't get all my stuff out, and I realized halfway through that I didn't have sugar, and I had to run to the store really quick. Like, practice not knowing things, and then it makes you better at getting through an imposter syndrome stage faster.
That's a great suggestion, because I was just talking to a woman yesterday who was so proud of herself because she flew somewhere alone, rented a car in a big city, drove out to see some family that needed to see her, some kind of family situation. And she had never done that on her own before, and she was terrified of doing it. And I'm like, just freaking do it. Like, you know how to drive, you know how to read a map, you know how to work your GPS. Like, this is not, but she was terrified of this because she lives a very order tolerant life. And so she was able to do it. And I'm like, what a perfect example of the imposter syndrome. And it's just herself, it's self-doubt. But in that way, she's like, what if I can't pull it off? Because this was a surprise visit. And so she didn't want to have to call the people locally if she got lost or whatever. I'm like, this is so doable for you. But she really was worried about it, but she made herself do it. And now she's going to be a lot more confident every single other time that she wants to do anything like that. So I love that example. It's a great idea. Okay.
I think
that's
done.
it. Yep.
Okay.
We're done. So
we're done with you.
We're done with you. And we have lots of other stuff to do. We love you, and you have other things to do. So thanks for being here. Any last words? Or I was going to show off my last words in testament or whatever. So show off my new Wonder Woman stickies that Shelly found at Mitzi's bookstore in Rapid. They're super sweet. Look at that. Awesome. So I made me think that we should probably do a little plug for all of our whatever we love and like. So I decided to start with my little Wonder Woman stickies. Mm-hmm.
All right. Well, I like Folgers coffee, so find that at your local Walmart, Safeway, Albertsons, wherever you are in the world. Okay.
All right. Thanks, everybody.
Lead powerfully.
Change the world. See you next time.